This is East Asia Tonight.
Good evening, I'm Jill Newbronner, and here are tonight's top stories from East Asia. South Korea begins the process of impeaching President Yoon Suk-yeol, with the first hearing at the Constitutional Court set for before the end of the month. Further slowdown in Chinese consumer spending muddies the outlook for Asia's #1 economy amid investor apathy around recent stimulus measures. Officials from China arrive in Taipei for a rare visit at a time of heightened cross-strait tensions, marked by increased Chinese military activities around the island. And police in Japan continue a manhunt for the suspect in a weekend stabbing attack that left a teenage girl dead. Also on East Asia Tonight, a group of civilians in Taiwan steps up to take on tough missions when disaster strikes. See what the volunteers can achieve through teamwork and resilience while balancing the commitments of their everyday lives. South Korea's Constitutional Court has scheduled the first hearing for President Yoon Suk-yeol's impeachment trial for December the 27th, paving the way for the court to begin its formal review. Now, the court has up to 6 months to decide whether to remove Mr. Yoon from office or reinstate him. 6 court justices held their first meeting since the opposition-led National Assembly filed the case over the weekend. The court meeting comes a day after Mr. Yoon refused to comply with a summons by prosecutors. Mr. Yoon and his inner circle are facing potential charges of insurrection for the short-lived martial law. Meanwhile, South Korea's ruling party leader has stepped down, saying his position has become untenable following his support for Mr. Yoon's impeachment. Han Dong-hoon has faced backlash within the party, but he stood by his call, saying he does not regret the process nor his criticism of the opposition.
하지만 계엄이 잘못이라고 해서 민주당과 이재명 대표의 폭주와 범죄 혐의가 정당화되는 것은 절대 아닙니다. 이재명 대표 재판의 타이머는 멈추지 않고 가고 있습니다.
Well, let's go straight to CNA's Im Young-suk, who's joining us live from an anti-Yoon rally in Seoul. Young-suk, now it appears that Mr. Yoon is not obliged to attend that hearing scheduled for next Friday. Now, given his resistance that we saw yesterday, are we expecting perhaps another no-show from Yoon? And if so, what happens next?
Well, yes, President Yoon Suk-yeol is not obligated to attend that trial on December 27th. And so many experts here don't think that he is going to attend that personally. But it is very likely that he could send his legal team or his lawyers because they will need someone to represent President Yoon at that trial. Now, this trial on next Friday is really just to prepare for the coming trials in the Constitutional Court. And it will be to discuss the agenda and how they will proceed with the future trials. Now, having said that, it seems like President Yoon Suk-yeol has already started to get his legal team together because we are hearing that he has appointed Kim Hong-il, who is a very close friend of President Yoon, as the head of that legal team. Now, Mr. Kim Hong-il used to work as a prosecutor together with President Yoon when they were in the prosecutor's office. He is known to have worked at one of the South Korea's big legal firms here in South Korea too. And he was appointed to several high-ranking positions under President Yoon Suk-yeol, including one at the Korea Communications Commission. And so he seems like he has been appointed, and it looks like this could be a very big legal team because President Yoon Suk-yeol has to not just fight the impeachment bill in the Constitutional Court, but he will also have to fight the arrest warrants and the possibility of being arrested because right now there are several body groups in South Korea who are trying to seek arrest warrants for President Yoon. Now, there's the prosecutors, there's the police, but there's also a joint investigative team comprising of officials from the Defense Ministry, the police, and the Anti-Corruption Agency. Now, they have tried to send a summons request to President Yoon. It failed on Sunday. It failed today, too. They tried to give that request to the security officials outside his residence, but they refused to take it, saying that they don't think that they should be taking that request. And so now we are hearing that a registered mail has been sent to President Yoon. But, President Yoon has said that he was going to take all political and legal responsibilities. And so many experts here are saying that it is very likely that he is going to have this all-out war in courts, whether it's the Constitutional Court or the other courts, as he faces all these arrests. But having said that, also, his ruling party is going through this big turmoil right now, since the head of the ruling party, Han Dong-un, has also resigned, taking responsibility, and he has said that he has no regrets for voting for that impeachment bill at the National Assembly. He said that it was something that he had to do, since President Yoon Suk-yeol did not say that he was going to resign early. And so it seems like there's going to be a turmoil within the ruling party too, but it remains to be seen whether the ruling party will be able to get its act together, because if the Constitutional Court upholds the motion bill, then South Korea will have to hold a presidential election within the next 60 days.
Yeah, Yoon Suk, we can hear the rally kicking off in the background there. I wanted to ask, does Mr. Yoon still have enough influence to further fuel divisions along party lines or political lines?
Well, he still has his supporters. I went to the presidential office today, and there were just garlands of flowers out there with supporting messages for President Yoon. But, social media plays a very big role here, and South Korea is one of the most internet-savvy country in the world. And, more than 90% of the young South Koreans, including those over the age of 3, have internet access, whether it's through their mobiles or through their internet at home too. Now, many experts are saying that the social media has played a crucial role also, and in a way amplified this division here in South Korea, because many of the younger South Koreans, especially those you see out here, they have started to take part in these rallies, and most of the young generation are getting their news through social media. There have been surveys showing that more than half of South Korea's population rely on the news from the social media, and it's mostly the young population. And many South Korean experts have voiced concerns, saying that these are information that have not gone through the fact-finding process, and so a lot of the information that's out there could be by the right groups, or it could be from the far left groups, and so it leaves the Korean society very polarized, and there are concerns about the role of the social media in the coming months and years here in South Korea.
Thank you so much, Yoon Suk. We've been listening to CNA's Yoon Suk reporting from an anti-Yoon rally in Seoul. Now, some analysts say the deciding factor in President Yoon Suk-yeol's impeachment will be whether a charge of rebellion can be recognized in court. They also considered the likelihood of Mr. Yoon being removed from office.
저는 반반 봅니다. 그러니까 이제 일단 증거가 어떻게 나오느냐에 따라서 달라질 거고요. 만약에 윤 대통령 말한 것에서 끝나고 추가적인 증거가 없으면, 다시 말하자면은 특전사 사령관의 주장을 뒷받침할 수 있는 증거가 없으면 증거 없이 인정할 수는 없지 않습니까? 그렇기 때문에 그렇게 되면 오히려 내란죄가 인정되지 못한다. 이렇게 되고 그러면 탄핵도 인정하기 어렵다 쪽으로 갈 수 있습니다.
Right now, the Constitutional Court has 6 judges, so it is short 3 judges. 6 judges, they can make the decision. They can examine the case and make the decision. But it is important for the National Assembly to ensure legitimacy. So they already nominated 3 judges, and the Prime Minister Han Duck-soo will review those nominees, and if he ratifies those nominees, and then the Constitutional Court will have the full bench for trying this case. That is highly likely, and they said it's gonna. People are arguing that this is an important case, so it could take 3 to 4 months in the Constitutional Court.
If only 6 members of the court continue and reach a decision, whichever decision it may be, some will ask, was that actually constitutional? So although there was a time, okay, let's go with these 6 members so that we can reach a conclusion. But doing that, it raises a lot of questions. So at present, they are doing their best so that there is no question asked later on.
So, with the walls closing in on President Yoon, one of the questions is who his successor would be if the Constitutional Court upholds his impeachment and snap elections are called. Well, opposition Democratic Party leader Lee Jae-myung is a likely frontrunner, according to a recent poll. The lawyer-turned-politician lost to Mr. Yoon in the 2022 election by the narrowest vote margin in the country's electoral history. Some analysts say the 59-year-old has demonstrated strong leadership in these turbulent days, but his bid could be overshadowed by legal battles, including a court ruling that found him guilty of election law violations. Han Dong-hoon, who is, until today, was the leader of the ruling PPP, is also seen as a potential contender. He and Mr. Yoon worked as prosecutors before they both moved into politics, and Mr. Han became the president's first justice minister. But the 51-year-old was at odds with the president over the imposition of martial law. He faced criticism for failing to manage deep divisions within the PPP. From the Conservative Party, Oh Si-hun could emerge as a potential candidate. Ho is the mayor of Seoul, a post that's seen by some as a pathway to higher offices. Kim Dong-yan from the Democratic Party could also throw his hat into the ring. Pardon me. He is the governor of Gyeonggi province and could take on Lee Jae-myung for the party ticket. Now, the other politician who has gained popularity in the last few days is Assembly Speaker Woo Won-sik. For his role in lifting the martial law, he has climbed over a fence to reach the Assembly's main chamber that night and opened a meeting at 12:47 a.m. for the vote on the presidential decree. However, it is unclear at the moment whether he would run for the top job. South Korea's neighbors are closely watching the situation, but they're saying very little. The Chinese Foreign Ministry, when asked about President Yoon's impeachment, called it an internal affair and declined comment beyond urging stable ties with Seoul.
韩国是中国的重要近邻和友好合作伙伴，推动中韩关系健康稳定发展，符合双方的共同利益。中方对韩的政策是一贯的，保持着稳定性。希望韩方与中方相向而行，为深化两国的友好合作和战略合作伙伴关系做出积极努力。
The ministry last week expressed a deep dissatisfaction after President Yoon, in a comment, suggested that Chinese nationals had been spying on South Korean defense and intelligence assets. Japan, too, refraining from commenting on its neighbor, but said Tokyo is paying close attention.
いずれにいたしましても韓国は国際社会のさまざまな課題にパートナーとして協力すべき重要な隣国でありまして、現下の戦略環境の下、日韓関係の重要性は変わりません。韓国側とは引き続き緊密に意思疎通をしてまいります。
We also have some reaction from North Korea, which has been relatively tight-lipped over the political turmoil in the South. State media, KCNA, issuing its first report on Mr. Yoon's impeachment, describing him as a, quote, ringleader of rebellion. The report claimed the South Korean president attempted to shift responsibility for what it called a foolish emergency martial law declaration onto opposition parties. Relations between the two Koreas have been at one of their lowest points in years, with the North launching a flurry of ballistic missiles in violation of UN sanctions. The North has also been bombarding the South with trash-carrying balloons since May in what it says is retaliation for anti-Pyongyang propaganda missives sent over to the north by activists. You can keep up to date on everything that's unfolding within South Korea by visiting our website. That's cna.asia. There you'll find articles laying out the next phase in the political crisis unfolding in Seoul. In other news, Chinese officials are in Taipei for a rare visit at a time of heightened cross-strait tensions. Led by a deputy Shanghai mayor, the delegation of around 90 people will be attending a one-day event tomorrow. Taiwan's top China policy body says the Chinese delegation has agreed to keep a, quote, low profile amid taut relations, following what Taipei says is China's largest maritime drills in years near Taiwan last week. China deployed around 90 ships from near the southern islands of Japan to the South China Sea. A Taiwan security official said the vessels simulated attacks on foreign ships and practiced blockading sea routes. Meanwhile, Taiwan has received some 38 Abrams battle tanks from the United States. They are the first new tanks to be delivered to the island in 30 years, boosting its military capabilities. Washington has been Taipei's most important ally and biggest arms supplier, much to the ire of Beijing, which claims Taiwan as part of its own territory. Coming up on East Asia Tonight, unexpected weakness in China's retail sales, reinforcing worries about its economic growth. And South Korean financial authorities urge business continuity amid the political turmoil. Welcome back as we get some business news with Ronan Lim on November economic indicators out of China. Looking like the data has reinforced worries about the weak domestic consumption in the country, Roland.
Right you are. Retail sales growth slowed in China, but its factories are churning faster as manufacturing continues to outperform consumer spending. Retail revenue grew 3% on year. That's the slowest pace in 3 months. It widely missed expectations and is a sharp slowdown from the 4.8% growth in October. Industrial output came in as expected at 5.4% on year. But fixed asset investment for the year to November slowed to 3.3% from the 3.4% seen in the January to October period. Greater China markets ended in the red following the data release. The benchmark indices were already dragged down last week after investors were seemingly unimpressed with policy pledges made at the recent key economic agenda planning meeting. And for more on this, we're joined by CNA's Deborah Wong, who joins us live from Hong Kong. Deborah, good to have you with us. Now, run us through these economic data numbers. How do the indicators from November actually reflect the challenges that China is facing?
So there are some bright spots like industrial output, which picked up slightly in November, but overall domestic consumption still appears to be sluggish. So the National Bureau of Statistics this morning said that an earlier start to the Singles' Day shopping festival in October sort of attributed to a slower growth in November. But analysts are also saying that overall consumer demand still remains weak because spending on big-ticket items like household appliances and even cars, they're still reliant on government subsidies like currently what we're seeing as the trade-in scheme. So the data overall does show that China still needs to step up its commitment to boost consumption as soon as possible. We have seen a series of stimulus policies in September, and but also last week we're seeing the Politburo meeting as well as the Central Economic Work Conference. During those two meetings, we're seeing that Chinese authorities come out to say that they will be adopting a moderately loose monetary strategy, and that's so far a departure from its consistently prudent scheme. All these are important because we are expecting some impending U.S. tariffs, and that could potentially hurt export growth, which traditionally has been a major economic driver. So there are no concrete details on how China intends to push forward with their moderately loose monetary policy yet, but we can expect more specifics next March during the annual 2 sessions.
Speaking of bright spots, we've also got home prices out of China today as well. Data seem to suggest that they are stabilizing.
So home prices across the board still fell, but they are falling at a smaller drop. We are also seeing new home prices in the four tier 1 cities of Beijing, Shanghai, Shenzhen and Guangzhou remain unchanged after over a year of declines. And one reason for that could potentially be, incentives by local governments, because last month they started offering incentives and they're also lowering taxes to basically encourage residents to buy up the flats. And that's economists are saying that's contributed, to higher transaction volume, which analysts are also saying have cushioned the fall of home prices. So they also still caution that, it's still too early to tell if this trend will continue, because that has it seems to be a result of pent-up demand, but real estate investment, on the other hand, it has continued to slow, suggesting that developers are still pessimistic about the overall slow market outlook. Last week, however, China vowed to stabilize the property market. We saw during the Politburo meeting, as well as, again, the Central Economic Work Conference, that they want to boost the property market. But, it so far has stopped at releasing any incremental details. But again, we can expect the specifics in the next two sessions, given that the ailing property market has been a drag on the Chinese economy for more than 3 years. Back to you.
We will be keeping an eye on the property market in China. Deborah Wong reporting to us live there. South Korean Finance Minister Choi Sang-mok has urged the business community to actively lead their organizations to ensure that operations proceed as per normal. Mr. Choi made these remarks at a meeting with 6 major business lobby groups. Now, he called on them to support initiatives that strengthen the country's industrial competitiveness and encourage them to hold year-end gatherings as planned. The business community has been increasingly worried about proposals from the opposition bloc that were seen as unfavorable to corporations. Chief among them, their concerns was the revisions to the Act on Testimony and Appraisal. The opposition-controlled National Assembly passed on the 28th of November a change that will forbid firms from refusing to submit documents that contain trade secrets. Executives would also be banned from missing legislative audit sessions as well as hearings. The revisions were intended to ensure such consultations were effective, but business groups are reportedly worried about the risk of divulgence. The proposal was widely expected to be vetoed before President Yoon Suk-yeol's martial law declaration. The new law would likely take effect in March next year if the acting president does not exercise his veto powers by the 21st of December. Over in markets, South Korean's benchmark indices ended mixed today. The Kospi snapped a 4-session winning streak to finish about 0.2% lower on profit-taking. It earlier gained by as much as 0.85% to reach its highest level since the 27th of November on optimism that political uncertainties were lessened with President Yoon's impeachment. The small-cap Kosdaq did manage to end more than 0.5% in the green. And South Korea's manufacturing and mining sectors saw their largest on-year decline of exports in 2023 due to slow demand in the semiconductor industry. Combined shipments by manufacturers and mining firms was down 2.5% from a year earlier. And this marks its sharpest on-year drop since 2000, when data was first recorded. But the statistics agency also noted that the decline can be attributed to the base effect following double-digit growth in 2022 and 2021. Now, the industries also saw a drop in firms and employees, and that's the first declines in at least 3 years. The latest data is a worrying trend for South Korea, which is among the top producers of semiconductors. The Korea Trade Investment Promotion Agency says the country's chip exports are facing growing competition from rivals Taiwan, Malaysia, and China, and that's the country's top competitor. The government agency also noted that this is a critical time for local firms to secure a technological edge over rivals in order to strengthen its export competitiveness. And that'll do it for business. Jill, back to you.
Thank you so much, Roland, for that. Coming up on East Asia tonight, China sets its eyes on joining CPTPP after the UK marks its biggest post-Brexit deal by joining the regional trade bloc. South Korea begins the process of impeaching President Yoon Suk-yeol, with the first hearing at the Constitutional Court set for before the end of the month. further slowdown in Chinese consumer spending muddies the outlook for Asia's #1 economy amid investor apathy around recent stimulus measures. And officials from China arrive in Taipei for a rare visit at a time of heightened cross-strait tensions marked by increased Chinese military activity around the self-ruled island. The Chinese state-run Global Times says an expansion of the Trans-Pacific Trade Bloc, CPTPP, to include China, which is the next major economy applying to join the group, would be a boost to global free trade. The report, citing a senior Chinese trade official, says the scale and influence of the trade bloc would significantly jump, along with the consumer base and combined GDP, should China be a part of the pact. Now, on Sunday, the UK officially became the 12th and first European member of the CPTPP, but beyond the economic benefits, the deal could also hold a strategic significance for London. It will now have a say on who joins the bloc in the future. Earlier, CNA's Arnold Gay and Julie Yu spoke to Nick Mehta, British High Commissioner to Singapore, about the potential of the agreement and also concerns of escalating trade tensions, with Donald Trump taking over the White House next month.
The UK joining CPTPP is an incredibly important milestone for our partnerships in this part of the world, and it comes on the back of our ASEAN dialogue partner status. And the UK joining means that CPTPP now covers 15% of global GDP and is a really significant trading bloc. So being a part of that creates new opportunities for UK businesses, and it hopefully boosts trade investment with many countries in the region. So I think it's a really positive thing and one that should be celebrated. It will be for the countries within CPTPP to decide future memberships.
You're one of them.
Yes, we're one of them, exactly. Okay. But it will be along 3 basic principles. The first is a commitment to holding the high standards of CPTPP. The second is a track record of compliance with trade regulations around the world. And the third is consensus. It's a really important aspect of it that all countries that are part of CPTPP agree future memberships. And that applies to China and applies to many other countries.
And presumably it has to be such that any deal or any member that comes in is going to be, I guess, beneficial to all members concerned.
I think that's right, yes. And I hope that the 11 existing members will feel that the UK's inclusion is really going to boost their relationships and modernise the agreements that might already be in place. And in some areas, like trade and services, like the environment and digitalisation, I think the UK brings real strengths.
Speaking of trade, there are worries of Trump 2.0, obviously the trade war. But as UK being a trade-sensitive country, what are the UK's biggest worries and some of the strategies to protect your businesses and industries from the potential fallout?
Look, I think we're all waiting to see what President-elect Trump announces on the 20th of January. But our government has been clear in its messaging that we think potential trade tariffs imposed on any country will have an impact not just on the US economy, but on the global economy, and that includes the UK. So we'll be speaking to our US counterparts and urging for free and open trade as the way to increase wealth in all countries. We think that is the right way forward. That's a big reason for why we're joining CPTPP. But let's wait and see before making too many predictions.
Police in Japan are on a manhunt for the suspect of a stabbing attack over the weekend that left a teenage girl dead. The assailant has been described as a man appearing to be in his 40s, standing at about 170 centimeters tall. A national broadcaster, NHK, reported that the suspect attacked 2 junior high school students on Saturday night at a fast food restaurant in the city of Kitakyushu in Fukuoka Prefecture. The 15-year-old girl reportedly died from blood loss after being stabbed in the abdomen. The other victim, a boy, also 15, survived with serious injuries. Police say the attacker may have chosen his victims indiscriminately, with investigators citing the boy saying the assailant was a complete stranger. It remains unclear if the girl knew the suspect. Local media say the man did not say a word during the attack and fled on foot, spending less than 30 seconds in the store. Around 10 customers were present at that time. U.S. President-elect Donald Trump hosted Akie Abe, the widow of assassinated former Japanese Prime Minister Shinzo Abe, for a private dinner at Mar-a-Lago in Florida. Despite not holding any political office, Mrs. Abe's meeting with Mr. Trump comes before Japan's current Prime Minister, Shigeru Ishiba. Melania Trump shared this photo on social media showing Akie Abe standing between the Trumps, with Mr. Trump giving his signature thumbs up. Mrs. Trump also said they fondly remembered the late Japanese leader and honored his legacy. The Trumps previously met Akie Abe during Shinzo Abe's tenure as Japan's longest-serving prime minister. Known for his international alliances and economic policies, known as Abenomics, the Japanese leader was assassinated in 2022 during a political rally. A Malaysian Prime Minister Anwar Ibrahim has proposed appointing former Thai Premier Thaksin Shinawatra as one of his informal advisers in relation to Malaysia's ASEAN chairmanship next year. Mr. Anwar made the announcement on the sidelines of a bilateral meeting with current Thai Prime Minister Paetong Shinawatra in Putrajaya earlier today. CNA understands Mr. Anwar's proposed informal advisory group may include Singapore's former Minister of Foreign Affairs, George Yeo. CNA's Afifa Arifin has more on that bilateral meeting.
As Malaysia prepares to assume the ASEAN chairmanship for 2025, Prime Minister Anwar Ibrahim has proposed the formation of an informal advisory group to assist the ASEAN chairman. This group would consist of former ASEAN leaders, including former Thai Prime Minister Thaksin Shinawatra. Mr. Anwar made this announcement after a meeting with Thai Prime Minister Paetong Shinawatra, who is in Malaysia for a 2-day visit. The Prime Ministers held a bilateral meeting and co-chaired the 7th Malaysia-Thailand annual consultation, where they discussed potential areas for further collaboration and exchanged views on regional and international issues of mutual interest.
Now the 7th annual consultation is timely, of course, taking stock of the excellent bilateral relations, following through our excellent relation with former Prime Minister Thaksin Shinawatra, who I have agreed to appoint as my personal advisor, chairman of ASEAN, with a team of members from ASEAN countries, an informal setup. And thank you for agreeing to this, because we need the benefit of experience of such statesmen.
Mr. Anwar also highlighted the common position of both countries on the South China Sea, stressing respect for UNCLOS while maintaining strong relations with all nations. On Myanmar, he said both countries are committed to fully implementing the 5-point consensus and are engaging in informal talks at various levels to ensure Myanmar's participation and reintegration into ASEAN. Malaysia and Thailand also share a unified stance on the ascension of Timor-Leste as a full member of ASEAN. Additionally, Malaysia and Thailand reviewed their bilateral relationship and signed 2 agreements, one on cooperation in the fields of culture, arts and heritage, and another on the development of the rubber industry and economic cooperation.
The main purpose of my visit is to reaffirm the importance of Thai-Malaysian friendship and cooperation among a wide range of issues aimed at expanding and deepening our collaborations discussed a moment ago at the 7th annual consultation. I committed to maintain the dynamic of our relationship and our efforts towards common peace and prosperity.
Thailand remains a key trading partner for Malaysia, ranking as its 6th largest globally and 2nd largest within ASEAN in 2023, with bilateral trade valued at $24.83 billion. Afifa Arifin, CNA, Kuala Lumpur.
Israel raising the stakes in the occupied territory of the Golan Heights. The government has approved plans to expand settlements and double the population for the second time in 3 years. Saudi Arabia swiftly condemning the move, calling it sabotage of efforts to restore stability in Syria. Israel has occupied the Golan Heights for nearly 6 decades after capturing parts of it from Syria. It went on to annex the area, a move recognized only by the U.S. after Donald Trump signed an order during his first term in office. In fact, one settlement is named after the U.S. president-elect. The Jerusalem Post reports he is resisting, for now, an Israeli push for more annexation in the region, including the West Bank. Some 50,000 people live in the Golan Heights, comprising Druze, Arabs and Israelis. Concerns are mounting over Israel's territorial ambitions. Its troops continue to seize a demilitarized zone while launching airstrikes on what it claims are militant targets.
אין לנו עניין להתעמת עם סוריה. אנחנו נקבע את מדיניות ישראל כלפי סוריה לפי המציאות המתהווה בשטח. אני מזכיר שבמשך עשרות שנים סוריה הייתה מדינת אויב אקטיבית לישראל. היא תקפה אותנו שוב ושוב, היא אפשרה לאחרים לתקוף אותנו משטחה, היא אפשרה לאיראן לחמש את חיזבאללה דרך שטחה.
The Netanyahu government will invest heavily to persuade people to move to the Golan Heights, pumping millions of dollars into areas like education and renewable energy.
Netanyahu's office said the government unanimously approved a more than $11 million plan to encourage demographic growth in the Golan. It said Netanyahu submitted the plan to the government, quote, in light of the war and the new front facing Syria, and out of a desire to double the population in the Golan. Israel sent its troops into a long-standing buffer zone earlier this month as Syrian rebels ousted the long-reigning President Bashar al-Assad. Saudi Arabia, the United Arab Emirates, and Jordan have condemned the incursion. Israeli leaders said it was a temporary security measure in light of the instability in Syria. Amid the tumult in Syria, Israeli airstrikes targeted hundreds of military sites across the country. Syria's de facto leader Ahmed al-Shara said on Saturday that Israel was using false pretexts to justify its attacks on Syria. He also said he was not interested in engaging in new conflicts as his country focuses on rebuilding. Shara leads the Islamist Hayat Tahrir al-Sham, or HTS, the group that swept Assad from power last Sunday, ending the family's 5-decade iron-fisted rule. Israel annexed captured parts of the Golan Heights in 1981. Syria has long rejected Israeli claims to the territory, but past efforts to reach a peace treaty failed. In 2019, then-President Donald Trump declared U.S. support for Israeli sovereignty over the Golan, but the annexation has not been recognized by most countries.
Well, despite its blacklisted status, HTS is receiving more international outreach to establish contact. The UN Special Envoy for Syria, Geir Pedersen, arrived in Damascus on Sunday. He held talks with rebel leader Ahmad al-Shara, also known previously as Abu Muhammad al-Julani. Mr. Pedersen called for an inclusive political process, credible justice system, and more humanitarian aid. A delegation from Qatar also visited Syria to meet officials from the caretaker government. The Qataris reaffirmed their commitment to supporting Syrians. Tomorrow, they will reopen their embassy, which closed for 13 years during the uprising. On the same day, a French diplomatic team will visit Damascus to make contact with the new authorities. Coming up on East Asia tonight, a potentially rocky road ahead for South Korea's multi-billion-dollar tourism industry as the country grapples with the fallout from its political crisis. And a behind-the-scene look at how ordinary civilians in Taiwan step up to take on extraordinary missions when disaster strikes. Natural disasters are a constant threat in Taiwan, where frequent typhoons, floods and earthquakes wreak havoc on communities. A group of civilians has stepped up to take on extraordinary missions during such times. CNA's No Ordinary Rescue, Lifeline on Wheels, brings you up close to see what goes on behind the scenes.
台湾因为水灾跟风灾、地震，其实闻名全世界。在921啦、88水灾啦，然后吉普车救援这一块开始被重视了。那这部分我们吉普车救援目前在台湾是一个蛮弱势的一个区块。在灾区里面落石啊、山崩啊，或者是溪床里面的水量，必须用到吉普车，是因为我们有改装之后才能去克服这一些路况。那改装之后，我们的车子其实是可以胜任很多的地形跟困难，还有救灾。台湾极地联盟它是一个脸书的平台，我们就是在整合所有的吉普车的一个运作。那在灾时的时候，可以去集结这一些我们平常在使用吉普车的人来做运补或救灾。台湾极地救援联盟刚开始，我们并没有很多人，只有1、2位。那在脸书成立的时候，我们也并没有去广域的去邀请很多人。我们就是刚开始，吉普车界只是都是在做一些比赛啦，或者是自己去山上享乐的一个器具。我们看了一些影片，有用吉普车做了灾难的救援。慢慢的去深入了解之后，参与了一些救难协会去搜寻受困失踪的人口。挑战性是在于时间跟体力的对抗，越快完成一个任务，挑战性就降低。那如果一个灾区的时间越拉越长的话，会关系到的就是我们的体力。最有挑战性的就是仁爱乡的风灾，我们用了1个多礼拜，每一天载运物资上山下山，上山下山，1天至少3趟。我们运送物资进去的时候，小孩子看到我们，他们是开心的，他们有吃的有喝的，就觉得这是一个非常温暖的动作。每一个任务只要都完成，就是圆满跟满意。一两片。团队目前有4800多位。
我们物资送到了，辛苦了，辛苦了！哎，
这一个社团慢慢的让社会看见之后，很多人就加入。加入了之后，然后有车友出去玩受困，他们就会出去帮忙。在台湾并没有一个单位可以来认证我们这一个吉普人，只有我们吉普人去认证吉普人。那在认证的过程中，当然会在于每一个人的品性，每一个人的个性，是不是能做到一个完整的吉普人？最主要就是能够帮助需要帮助的人，这就是吉普人。
Well, to see more of the unique challenges these volunteers face, you can catch the complete No Ordinary Rescue episode, Lifeline on Wheels, on our website, cna8.asia, MeWatch, or also on YouTube. South Korea's tourism industry is bracing itself for a slowdown amid the current political crisis. Authorities expect to miss their targets for visitor arrivals this year. CNA's senior Korea correspondent Lee Myung-suk has more.
Scenes of troops attempting to seal off South Korea's National Assembly were broadcast across the world last week after President Yoon Suk-yeol made a short-lived declaration of martial law. This and the subsequent political turmoil has tarnished the country's image, something that officials are now trying to reverse.
Is Seoul safe? As the mayor of Seoul, my answer is clear. Yes, Seoul is safe. Yes, Seoul is safe. Don't worry and come to Seoul. Seoul is still a fun city.
At a meeting with tourism industry players, Seoul Mayor Oh Se-hoon repeated his message in Japanese and Mandarin, reassuring foreign tourists that they can visit South Korea with peace of mind.
서울을 경험한 관광객들이 서울은 안전하고 다시 오고 싶은 도시다, 재미있는 도시다라는 확신을 가지고 돌아갈 수 있도록 최선을 다하겠습니다. 이것은 단순한 이벤트가 아니라 서울시의 이미지와 관광산업 회복의 밑바탕이 될 거라고 확신합니다. 이번에도 관광업계와 서울시가 힘을 합쳐서 새로운 기회를 만들어 가겠습니다.
Winter is usually peak tourist season, especially for visitors from Southeast Asia. But hotels and tour agencies in Seoul have seen some cancellations due to safety concerns over the past week. South Korea is still hoping to attract millions more visitors this year, though it expects to fall short of its target of 20 million foreign tourists in 2024.
저희가 보기에는 한 1,700만 정도로 예상하고 있습니다. 지금 12월에 좀 어려운 상황이 겪다 보니까 좀 어려움이 있는데, 저는 좀 생활하는데, 관광하는데 지장이 없다는 걸 알림을 통해 가지고 내년에는 좀 더 많은 분들이 오실 수 있도록 해서 저희가 목표하는 3천만까지 좀 목표 달성할 수 있도록 최선의 노력을 다하겠고요.
Tourists we spoke to in the popular Myeongdong shopping district say they feel safe despite the ongoing turmoil.
There were a bit worries, especially amongst my friends and families. So, but because we already booked the trip here to South Korea, so obviously we'll just carry on with the trip. For us Singaporeans, we have only one season, which is just heat. Whereas here it's winter, right? So basically, we get to enjoy this kind of cold temperature.
I woke up in the morning later, and everybody was living normally, except in Yeouido, where there was like manifestation. But honestly, it didn't scare me. Korea is safe, South Korea, but yeah, I don't feel any danger. Just I can feel that some people are angry because of what the president did, but that's it.
But some embassies in the country have advised their citizens to stay away from areas where protests are being held. South Korea saw a drop of about 23% in tourist arrivals when there were protests in 2016 and 2017 calling for the impeachment of former President Park Geun-hye. There are concerns that the country could see a repeat of that tourism slowdown in the coming months as the political fallout continues. Lee Myung-suk, CNA, Seoul.
Well, thanks for joining us on East Asia Tonight this Monday. Don't forget headlines anytime at cna.asia. We're also on Facebook and YouTube. Bye.